If you find this recording, don't come down here. Seal the entrance. Pour concrete over the access hatch and forget we ever existed. We are not saved. We are buried. My name is Jackson Cole. I was, the operations chief for the Vanguard Tunnel Authority. I am currently sitting in Sector 4 of the ventilation plenum, directly above the westbound traffic lanes. It's dark. My flashlight is working, but the beam struggles to cut through the air. The air isn't transparent anymore. It's red. A thick, swirling fog of copper-colored dust that tastes like blood and batteries. Every time I breathe, I can feel the grit coating my teeth. I'm looking at my hand. I'm holding a wrench. Or I was. Now, I'm holding a pile of red powder that is slipping through my fingers like dry sand. 5 minutes ago, this was a drop-forged steel pipe wrench. Now, it's just a memory of the Iron Age. You need to understand where I am. The Vanguard is a tube, a 15-mile-long concrete straw sitting on the bottom of the ocean. Above me is 100 meters of salt water. Around me is reinforced concrete. And inside the concrete, steel. Millions of tons of steel rebar. The skeleton that holds the skin of this tunnel together against the crushing weight of the ocean. And the skeleton just died. I can hear the walls groaning. It's not a mechanical sound. It's the sound of the earth shifting. The rust is expanding. The tunnel is trying to vomit us out, but there is nowhere to go. Let's go back. Just 20 minutes. It feels like a lifetime ago. 10 a.m. Traffic was heavy. The morning rush. I was in the plenum, the crawl space that runs above the ceiling of the traffic lanes. It's a loud, dirty place. The roar of thousands of cars below vibrates right through the floorboards. The massive jet fans, huge steel turbines hanging from the ceiling, scream constantly, pushing the exhaust fumes out of the tunnel. I was with Diaz. He's my foreman. Good kid. Tough as nails. We were inspecting Fan Unit 42, a monster of a machine, 12 feet wide, with blades made of hardened stainless steel. It spins at 2,000 revolutions per minute. Diaz was shouting over the roar of the fan. Vibration sensors are tripping, Jack. I think the bearing is shot. I nodded, tapping my headset. Shut it down. Isolate the breaker. Diaz gave me a thumbs up and walked over to the control box on the catwalk. He reached for the lever, the heavy, galvanized steel lever. I was looking at the fan blades. They were a blur of motion, a silver circle of power. And then the world blinked. It happened at 10:02 a.m. exactly. I didn't hear an explosion. I didn't see a flash. I saw a color change. 1 second, the spinning blades of the fan were silver. The next, they were a cloud. It defied physics. The centrifugal force. The momentum. Usually, if a fan blade breaks, it shoots out like shrapnel. It tears through walls. But the blades didn't break. They dissolved. Instantly. In a fraction of a second, the massive steel turbines turned into a cloud of red dust. Because they were spinning so fast, the dust exploded outward like a bomb made of paprika. Poof! The sound changed instantly. The high-pitched scream of the engine stopped, replaced by a dull whoosh. The dust cloud hit me. It was hot. Friction heat. I coughed, blindingly waving my hands. Diaz! I yelled. I looked over to the control box. Diaz was standing there. He was staring at his hand. He had reached for the steel lever to shut down the fan. The lever was gone. The box, a heavy steel enclosure, was gone. Diaz was standing there, his hand gripping empty air, covered in a sudden shower of red rust. The internal copper wiring of the box was hanging loose, dangling like severed nerves, sparking against the concrete wall. "What the hell?" Diaz screamed. It just dusted. "The fan!" I pointed. "Look at the fan." The motor housing, cast iron, had crumbled. The heavy copper coils of the stator were now just a pile of wire sitting on the catwalk grating. Wait. The grating. We were standing on a steel mesh catwalk, suspended 10 feet above the concrete floor of the plenum. "Diaz! Don't move. Too late." Snap, snap, snap. The sound of 1,000 zippers opening at once. The steel mesh under our boots lost its cohesion. The atomic bonds just let go. The floor beneath us turned into powder. I fell. I hit the concrete floor of the plenum hard. It was only a 10-foot drop, but I landed on my side. The breath was knocked out of me. A cloud of rust rained down on top of me, the remains of the catwalk. I heard a sickening crunch next to me. Diaz! He had fallen too. But he landed on something. Or rather, through something. I scrambled up, coughing red spit. Diaz! He was groaning. He was half buried in a pile of red dust. My leg! Jack, my leg! I shined my light. The steel toe cap of his safety boot. It was gone. The leather was flattened. But we were alive. The concrete floor of the plenum held. "We have to move," I said, grabbing his arm. "We have to get to the access hatch." And then, the floor vibrating beneath us changed. The roar of the traffic below. It stopped. It didn't fade away. It stopped instantly, and was replaced by the sound of a landslide. The plenum floor has vents, grates that look down into the traffic tunnel. I crawled over to one. The grate was gone, obviously. Just a square hole in the concrete. I looked down, and I saw the apocalypse. The Vanguard tunnel has 3 lanes westbound. Speed limit 60. Most people do 70. I saw a sedan. A family car. It was moving in the fast lane. Suddenly, the bottom fell out. Literally. The chassis, the axles, the engine block, the drive shaft, everything that makes a car rigid, turned to dust. The car didn't roll. It didn't skid. It collapsed flat onto the asphalt while moving at 70 miles per hour. Without wheels, the remaining parts, the plastic dashboard, the fiberglass body panels, the rubber tires, now flopping uselessly without rims, and the passengers, hit the road surface. Friction took over. I watched a luxury SUV turn into a smear. The passengers. God. They were still traveling at 70. They were thrown forward, not through the windshield, but with the windshield. It was a cascade of disintegration. Hundreds of cars, all at once, dropping to the tarmac. The sound was deafening. SCRACH crunch. The sound of plastic and glass grinding against asphalt. I saw a semi-truck. The trailer was aluminum. It survived. But the cab, the engine, gone. The massive aluminum trailer, carrying tons of cargo, slammed into the back of the invisible cab, crushing the driver against the road. And then, the red fog filled the tunnel. The iron from thousands of engines, thousands of car frames, thousands of truck chassis. It all oxidized in a split second. The tunnel below filled with a billowing, opaque cloud of iron oxide. It looked like the tunnel was filling with blood. I couldn't see the bodies anymore. I could only hear them, screaming. Thousands of people, trapped in the wreckage of their own vehicles, choking on the dust of what used to be their safety cages. "Jack!" Diaz whispered. He was looking at the ceiling of the plenum, the roof of the tunnel. What? The lights. The tunnel lighting was LED strips, plastic and aluminum. They were still on, flickering through the red fog. But the brackets holding them? Steel. As we watched, miles of lighting fixtures detached from the ceiling. They fell into the red fog below like fiery rain. And then, something much worse happened. We are under the ocean. You have to remember that. The Vanguard tunnel is made of segments, precast concrete tubes, joined together and sealed. Concrete has a weakness. It has great compression strength, it can hold weight, but terrible tensile strength. It cracks if you pull it. That's why we put steel rebar inside it. The steel holds the concrete together when it shifts. I felt it before I heard it. A vibration. Deep. Resonant. Boom. It came from the walls. "The rebar," I said, my voice trembling. "It's rusting." "Inside the concrete?" Diaz asked, his eyes wide, white circles in a face covered in red dust. "Yes. When iron rusts, it expands. It gets bigger. If the rebar turns to dust instantly, there's a void. But if it oxidizes, it creates pressure. Crack. A hairline fracture appeared on the ceiling of the plenum, right above Diaz's head. A fine line of grey dust falling. The tunnel is under immense hydrostatic pressure from the water above. Without the steel skeleton, the concrete is just brittle stone. "We have to get to the cross passage," I yelled. "The emergency exits to the eastbound tunnel." I hauled Diaz up. He couldn't put weight on his foot. I put his arm around my shoulder. We started to limp through the dark, red-filled crawlspace. The sound of the cars below had settled into a chaotic chorus of car alarms, the ones that still had plastic batteries, and human wailing. But the sound of the tunnel itself was getting louder. Groan. Snap. Pop. It sounded like we were inside the belly of a dying beast. We reached the first firewall, a heavy concrete wall separating the ventilation zones. There was a door, a blast-proof fire door. Steel. The door was gone. In its place was a rectangular pile of red powder, blocking the way. "Climb over." I shoved Diaz. We scrambled over the mound of what used to be a security door. It was warm. The chemical reaction was releasing heat. The air was getting hotter. We made it to the other side. And that's when I saw the water. Not a flood. Not yet. It was weeping. The concrete wall on my left, the outer shell of the tunnel, was wet. Dark stains were spreading across the grey surface. The seawater was being forced through the microscopic cracks left by the dissolved rebar. It was fizzing, the salt water reacting with the fresh iron dust. "It's breaching," Diaz said. "Jack, the ocean is coming in." I looked at my pressure gauge on my wrist. It's a dive watch. Titanium case. Rubber strap. It survived. 10:18 a.m. 16 minutes since the event. We are 5 miles from the nearest surface exit. We are trapped in a dissolving concrete tube, surrounded by the crushing weight of the Pacific Ocean, breathing the dust of 1,000 dead cars. And the lights just died. The main power cables. They must have had steel cladding. Pitch black. Just my flashlight beam, cutting through the swirling red tomb. And in the silence, I hear it. Drip, drip, drip. Turning into a stream. Splush. The tunnel isn't just cracking. It's leaking. I grab Diaz. Move. If we stay here, we drown. We have to find the service train. The maintenance cart. The cart is steel, Jack, Diaz says, his voice broken. The wheels are steel, I correct him. The body is fiberglass. It won't move. But it floats. We stumble forward into the darkness. The ocean is winning. We are still in the plenum, the crawlspace above the road. But it's not dry anymore. The water is ankle deep. But it's not water. I need you to imagine this clearly. Take seawater. Mix it with tons of fresh, powdery iron oxide, the dust from the dissolved fans, the conduits, the rebar. You don't get wet water. You get a slurry, a heavy, red paste. It's like wading through wet cement that smells like old pennies and brine. It's hot, too. The oxidation process releases heat. The water around our boots is steaming. It's a chemical bath. Diaz, I rasped. Keep moving. Don't stop. Diaz is dragging his leg. He's using a piece of PVC pipe as a crutch. He's tough, but he's going into shock. I can see his eyes in the beam of my flashlight. They are wide, darting around, trying to process a world where the rules of materials don't apply. Jack, he whispered. The hissing. What is that? I stopped. I listened. It's the walls, I said. High-pressure leaks. The water outside is at 10 atmospheres. It's forcing its way through the concrete pores. As if to prove me wrong, a jet of water erupted from the wall to my left. It was thin, no wider than a needle, but it was moving so fast it looked like a solid glass rod. It cut through the red fog and hit the opposite wall with a crack. Hydraulic cutting, I muttered. Don't touch the sprays, Diaz. They'll slice your finger off. We navigated the maze of concrete pillars. We were looking for the maintenance depot, a widened section of the plenum where we keep the service vehicles. There! Diaz pointed. Through the red haze, I saw a shape. White. Smooth. The service cart. We call it the Guppy. It's a custom-built, low-profile vehicle designed to shuttle tools and men through the vents. It has a fiberglass body. We scrambled toward it, splashing through the hot red muck. The Guppy was sitting on its belly. The steel axles and wheels had dissolved, leaving the fiberglass shell flat on the concrete. It looked like a boat that had run aground. It's useless, Diaz said, slumping against the hull. No wheels. It's not a car anymore, I said, running my hand over the smooth plastic flank. It's a raft. A raft. Look at the floor, Diaz. The water is rising. In an hour, this plenum will be flooded. We need something that floats. I opened the side hatch. The hinges were nylon, corrosion-resistant for sea air. They held. Inside, the cabin was dry. Small, cramping, but dry. Get in, I said. We load it with supplies. Then we wait for the water to lift us. Wait. Diaz shook his head. Jack, if the water lifts us, it pushes us against the ceiling. We'll be crushed. He was right. The plenum is only 6 feet high. If it floods, we drown against the roof. We have to take it down, I said. To the road deck. Down? Into that. Diaz pointed to a floor vent. I walked over to the vent. I shined my light down. The traffic tunnel below was a circle of hell. The water down there was already 3 feet deep, a raging river of red sludge, churning over the wreckage of the cars. The invisible cars. I saw a BMW floating past. Well, the parts of it that weren't steel. The leather seats, the plastic dashboard, the rubber tires, they were all bobbing in the current, held together by the remaining aluminum body panels and the wiring harness. It looked like a dissected frog. And the bodies. I turned my light away. I couldn't look at the faces. They were coated in red mud. They looked like terracotta statues bobbing in the tide. "We have to go down," I said, my voice hard. "The pressure is lower in the main tunnel. And the exits, the cross-passage doors to the eastbound tunnel, are at road level." "How?" Diaz asked. "The service ladder is steel. It's gone." I looked at the hole in the floor. It was a 12-foot drop to the road deck. "The fire hose," I said. I pointed to a red cabinet on the wall. "The reel is steel, but the hose, synthetic rubber and nylon weave." I ran to the cabinet. The steel drum of the reel had turned to dust, leaving the coiled hose sitting in a pile of rust. I grabbed the nozzle, brass, heavy. "Tie it to the concrete pillar," I ordered. We wrapped the hose around a structural column. I threw the other end down the hole. "We lower the guppy first," I said. It took everything we had. The guppy weighs 400 pounds. But without the steel motor and batteries, which had fallen out the bottom when the mounts dissolved, it was lighter, maybe 200. We dragged it to the hole. We tied the hose around it. We lowered it. It swung in the air, then splashed into the red river below. It bobbed. It floated. "Your turn," I said to Diaz. He slid down the hose. He landed on the roof of the guppy. He scrambled inside. I followed. The hose was slick with red slime. My grip slipped. I fell the last 4 feet, landing on the fiberglass roof of the cart. I rolled off and fell into the water. The cold hit me first, then the taste. I went under. The sludge filled my mouth. It was salt and iron. It tasted like I was chewing on a mouthful of bloody coins. I gagged, thrashing. The fluid was thick, viscous. It clung to my clothes. It felt like swimming in soup. A hand grabbed my collar. "Diaz!" He hauled me up. I scrambled onto the roof of the guppy, retching. I spit out a glob of red mucus. "You okay?" Diaz asked. "Start paddling," I wheezed. We used 2 plastic shovels from the guppy's toolkit. We paddled the white fiberglass pod down the flooded highway. The sound down here was different. In the plenum, it was a groan. Here, it was an echo chamber. "Help me, please, Mom." The survivors. They weren't all dead. Some had survived the crash. They were clinging to the wreckage. We drifted past a pile of debris. A school bus, or what was left of it. The yellow body panels were floating like lily pads. A woman was sitting on a yellow roof panel. She was holding a child. She was covered in red mud from head to toe. Only her eyes were white. "Help us!" she screamed when she saw our light. "We can't stop," Diaz yelled. "The current is too strong." It was true. The water was rushing toward the lowest point of the tunnel, the midpoint, 7 miles out. We were being sucked into the drain. "Grab the rope." I threw the rest of the fire hose, which we'd cut, toward her. She lunged. She missed. The current took her. She spun away into the darkness, her scream echoing until it was swallowed by the roar of the water. I slammed my fist against the fiberglass roof. "Damn it! Jack!" Diaz yelled. "Look out!" Ahead of us, a massive shape loomed out of the fog. It was a tanker truck. The aluminum tank was intact. It was floating on its side, blocking the tunnel like a dam. The water was piling up behind it, churning violently. "We're going to hit it." We paddled frantically, trying to steer the guppy to the side. But the current was a monster. We slammed into the aluminum tanker. Clang! The guppy spun. I was thrown off the roof again. I hit the side of the tanker. My shoulder popped. I clung to a ladder rung on the side of the tanker. Aluminum. Thank God for aluminum. Diaz. I looked back. The guppy was pinned against the tanker by the water pressure. Diaz was inside, banging on the window. "Climb up," I yelled. "Get on the tanker." I scrambled up the curved side of the silver tank. I reached the top. It was slippery, coated in oil and rust. I looked down the other side of the dam. The water level on the other side was lower. The tanker was holding back a wall of water. But that wasn't what stopped my heart. It was the light. Deep down the tunnel, miles away, there was a blue glow. Not the orange of fire, not the white of LEDs. Blue, like electric arcs. And it was pulsing. Thrum, thrum, thrum. "What is that?" Diaz scrambled up beside me, gasping. I stared at the blue light. It was rhythmic, like a heartbeat, and every time it pulsed, the red fog in the tunnel swirled, aligning itself with invisible magnetic lines. "The tunnel," I whispered. "It's a solenoid." "A what?" "A coil." The tunnel is a long tube wrapped in copper wiring for the power systems. The iron dust. It's conductive. Something down there is creating a massive magnetic field. Crack. The aluminum tanker beneath us groaned. The pressure of the water building up behind it was too much. The metal was buckling. "It's going to blow," I yelled. "Jump! Jump to the other side." We leaped from the top of the tanker into the lower water on the other side. Seconds later, the tanker collapsed. A tidal wave of red sludge and car parts surged over us. It swept us away, tumbling us like dolls in a washing machine, carrying us deeper into the dark, toward the pulsing blue light at the center of the earth. We are inside a battery. I don't know how else to describe it. The tunnel isn't just a flooded tube anymore. It has become a chemical cell. Think about the chemistry. You have millions of gallons of salt water, the electrolyte. You have tons of aluminum from the car bodies and tanker trailers, the anode. You have the copper wiring from the tunnel systems, the cathode. And connecting them all is this soup, this conductive sludge of iron oxide. The air tastes like ozone. It makes the hair on my arms stand up inside my wetsuit. My teeth hurt. I can feel the fillings vibrating in my jaw. We washed up on a beach, about a mile past the tanker crash. It wasn't sand. It was a dam of debris, thousands of plastic bumpers, dashboards, seat cushions and bodies, all tangled together in a floating island that jammed itself between the tunnel walls. Diaz is in bad shape. He swallowed the water. He's shivering violently, but his skin is burning hot to the touch. "Jack," he chatters, his teeth clicking together. "The lights. Look at the lights." I look up. The LED strips on the ceiling are dead. But the tunnel isn't dark. The air itself is glowing. Faint, purple streamers of static electricity are dancing across the surface of the black water. They arc from the ceiling to the water, snapping with a sound like a whip crack. Snap. Hiss. It's triboelectric charging. The dust swirling in the air is generating massive static. "Stay low," I whisper. "Don't present a point. If you stand up, you become a lightning rod." We crawled across the debris island. I needed to get to the service walkway on the right side. It's elevated. It might lead to a cross-passage door. But the debris. It wasn't just random. Jack. Diaz grabbed my arm. His grip was weak. Why are they moving? I shined my light on a pile of wreckage. There were 3 bodies. Drivers. They were dead. Clearly dead. But they were twitching. I crawled closer. I didn't want to, but I had to know. They were coated in the red paste, which had hardened into a crust. But the crust was patterned. It looked like iron filings on a magnet. Spiky. Geometric. And they were vibrating. Thrum. Thrum. Every time the massive blue pulse echoed down the tunnel from the deep zone, the bodies jerked. They're magnetized, I realized. The horror settled in my stomach like a cold stone. The iron in their blood. The iron dust coating their skin. They are reacting to the magnetic field. They weren't moving because they were alive. They were moving because they were ferrous. We had to crawl over them. I tried not to look at their faces, but I put my hand down on a chest to steady myself. I felt it. The hum. The body wasn't soft. It was rigid, hard as stone. The iron oxide had penetrated the clothes and the skin, calcifying them into statues that danced to the rhythm of the dying power grid. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I'm so sorry." We scrambled onto the concrete walkway. It was slick with slime, but solid. "The cross passage," I said, pointing my light. CP-14. It should be right there. We moved along the wall. The concrete was sweating rivers of seawater. The groaning of the tunnel was louder here. The mountain of water above us was winning. We reached the door. Cross Passage 14. A heavy steel blast door meant to save lives. It was gone. Just a rectangular frame of jagged concrete where the door used to be. And inside, a wall of red dirt? No, not dirt. I touched it. It was warm, packed tight. "It's the door," I said. It didn't just disappear. It turned to dust and then collapsed in place. The pile of rust was 6 feet high, blocking the passage. "We have to dig," I said. "Dig." Diaz looked at his hands. They were raw, bleeding. "If we stay here, we die," I said. "The air is toxic. The static will kill us. The eastbound tunnel. Maybe it's dry. Maybe the fans are still working there. We didn't have shovels. We had debris." I found a license plate. Aluminum. It was bent, but it was a scoop. Diaz found a plastic hubcap. We started to dig. It was like digging through hot ash. The dust billowed up, choking us. We tied rags around our faces. Scrape, toss, scrape, toss. We dug for what felt like hours. My shoulders screamed. My lungs burned. Then, my aluminum scoop hit something hard. Thunk. I hit something. I yelled. The other side. I cleared the dust away. It wasn't the other side. It wasn't air. It was something grey and smooth. I tapped it. It didn't ring like metal. It thudded. "Concrete?" Diaz asked. "No," I said. "It's too smooth." I dug more. I cleared a circle about 2 feet wide. It was a face. A massive, grey face. I recoiled, dropping the license plate. "What the—" I shined the light. It wasn't a human face. It was a mold. A cast. I realized what I was looking at. The cross passage wasn't empty when the event happened. Someone was standing there. A worker? A refugee from a car? They had been pressed against the steel door. When the steel turned to dust instantly, the person was encased in the falling powder. The heat, the moisture, it baked the dust around them, and the person inside. I saw a crack in the grey surface, a fissure running down the cheek of the mold. Red liquid was leaking out of the crack. "Don't touch it," I said, pulling Diaz back. "It's a tomb." We dug around the mold. We had to break the hardened rust to make a hole big enough to crawl through. I kicked the top of the pile. The crust gave way. A rush of air hit my face. Cool air. Air. Diaz gasped. I widened the hole. I shined the light through. The eastbound tunnel. It wasn't dry. But it wasn't flooded. The water level was only a few inches. And the lights were dead. Pitch black. "Go," I said. I pushed Diaz through the hole, over the pile of rust. He tumbled down the other side. I followed. I squeezed through the gap, sliding down the ramp of debris. I landed in shallow, cold water. I stood up. The air here was better. Still metallic, still dusty, but not the thick, suffocating fog of the westbound tube. "We made it," Diaz wheezed. "We're in the eastbound." I checked my compass. It was spinning wildly. The magnetic interference was everywhere. "We walk," I said. "We walk to the portal. 10 miles. Jack!" Diaz grabbed my shoulder. His grip was tight this time. "Listen." I listened. Silence. No, not silence. Click, click, click. It was coming from the darkness ahead of us. The sound of hard objects tapping on concrete. Is that water dripping?" Diaz asked. "No," I said, raising my flashlight. "That's footsteps." I swept the beam down the tunnel. The eastbound lanes were clogged with stationary cars, just like the other side. The chassis had dissolved, dropping the bodies to the floor. But something was moving among the cars. Small shapes. Fast shapes. "Rats," Diaz whispered. I focused the beam. They were crabs. Hundreds of them. Massive spider crabs. The Vanguard tunnel runs under the bay. The bay is full of marine life. When the walls breached, when the cracks opened, the small things got in first. But these weren't normal crabs. I saw one perched on the hood of a sunken Mercedes. Its shell was usually orange. Now it was dark red. Encrusted. It was eating the rust. It was scooping up the iron oxide paste with its claws and feeding it into its mouth. "They're feeding on the tunnel," I said, and then I saw what else they were eating. The crab scuttled over to the driver's seat, to the body slumped there, the body that was coated in the mineral paste. The crab clamped its claw onto the driver's finger. Snap. "They're scavengers," I said, backing up. "And they're hungry." There were thousands of them. A carpet of armored shells moving toward us. The clicking sound was the sound of thousands of claws on the pavement. "Run?" Diaz asked. "We can't run," I said. "You can barely walk." I looked around for a weapon. My wrench was dust. The fire hose nozzle was back in the other tunnel. I saw a shape on the wall. An emergency cabinet. But this one wasn't for fire hoses. It was marked "High Voltage, Breaker Access." "The crabs are armored," I said. "Shells are calcium. Conductive when wet." "Jack, what are you doing?" I ran to the panel. The door was fiberglass. I ripped it open. Inside, the breakers were gone, the steel mechanisms dissolved. But the copper bus bars? Thick slabs of copper. They were still there. And they were humming. The magnetic anomaly wasn't just in the other tunnel. It was inducing current in every copper wire in the system. These bars were live. "Get behind me!" I yelled to Diaz. I grabbed a loose piece of heavy-duty rubber matting from the floor, insulation. I wrapped it around my hands. I reached in. I grabbed 2 loose copper cables hanging from the destroyed breaker. They were thick as my thumb. Sparks showered down. "Hey!" I shouted at the carpet of crabs. "Hey! Over here!" The sea of shells stopped. Thousands of eye stalks turned toward the light. They surged forward. A wave of clicking legs. I waited. 10 feet. 5 feet. The lead crabs were splashing through the shallow water. "Close your eyes!" I yelled. I jammed the 2 copper cables into the water at my feet. Zzzz crack. The sound wasn't a zap. It was a thunderclap. The stored energy of the magnetic field discharged through the copper, into the salt water, and into the army of crabs. The water lit up white. The tunnel flashed like a strobe light. I saw the crabs stiffen. Their legs extended instantly. Their shells cracked from the sudden expansion of steam inside their bodies. Pop, 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 pop. It sounded like popcorn. Thousands of crabs exploding from the inside out. The shock wave knocked me backward. I dropped the cables. Darkness returned. Silence. Then, the smell of cooked seafood and ozone. I turned on my light. The floor was covered in a slurry of crab shells and pink meat. Nothing was moving. "Dinner is served," I muttered, my hands shaking uncontrollably. "You're crazy," Diaz breathed. "You're actually crazy." "I'm alive," I said. "Let's move. Before the big ones come." "Big ones." "Crabs are the bottom feeders, Diaz. If the cracks are big enough for crabs." I didn't finish the sentence. Because the ground shook. Not a vibration. A shift. The floor of the eastbound tunnel tilted. We slid sideways, slamming into the wall. "The foundation!" I yelled. "The seabed is liquefying." The tunnel wasn't just flooding. It was sinking. The sand under the tunnel was turning to quicksand as the water pressure equalized. "We have to get to the portal." We started to run, actually run this time, adrenaline masking the pain, up the sloping floor of the tunnel. But the slope was getting steeper. We weren't running out. We were climbing out. And at the top of the incline, a mile away, I saw it. Daylight? No. A massive, jagged hole in the roof of the tunnel. And falling through the hole was a ship. We are climbing a mountain inside a drain pipe. The structural integrity of the Vanguard tunnel has failed completely at Sector 9. The seabed beneath us didn't just liquefy. It slumped. The tunnel segment we are in has snapped off from the main line and tilted upward at a 30-degree angle. We aren't walking anymore. We are crawling on hands and knees up a slick, wet ramp of concrete, fighting gravity and the flow of water. And we are dodging the avalanche. "Watch out!" I screamed. Above us, in the gloom, a shape broke loose. A delivery van. Its chassis was dust, but the fiberglass body shell and the cargo inside, plastic crates of fruit, were sliding down the incline. It came at us like a bobsled. "Wall! Get to the wall!" I grabbed Diaz and shoved him into the maintenance walkway gutter. We flattened ourselves against the wet concrete. Whoosh! Crash! The van slid past US, picking up speed. It hit a pile of debris 50 feet below and shattered. Oranges and melons exploded everywhere, mixing with the red sludge. A surreal fruit salad in hell. "My ears!" Diaz moaned, clutching his head. "Jack, my ears won't pop." I swallowed hard. My ears clicked painfully. "Pressure," I said. "The water is rushing in. It's compressing the air in the tunnel. We are in a hyperbaric chamber. This is the silent killer." As the water fills the bottom of the tunnel, the air trapped at the top, where we are, gets squeezed. We are breathing air at 2, maybe 3 atmospheres of pressure. "Nitrogen narcosis," I muttered. "The Martini effect." I checked my own mind. Was I thinking straight? The edges of my vision were fuzzy. I felt a strange, detached euphoria. The terror was fading, replaced by a drunk, floaty sensation. "We have to keep moving," I said, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. "To the hole." The ship. We climbed for another 20 minutes. My thighs burned. My fingers were raw from gripping the textured concrete. We finally reached the breach. It wasn't a ship. Not exactly. It was a spear. From a distance, it looked like a hull. Up close, I recognized the shape. It was a wind turbine blade. A massive, single piece of composite fiberglass, easily 100 meters long. It must have been cargo on a barge passing overhead. When the barge's steel hull disintegrated, this monster fell. It dropped through 100 feet of water like a kinetic bombardment weapon. It punched straight through the concrete roof of the tunnel. It was wedged there now. A white, alien obelisk stabbing into our world. Water was thundering in around the edges of the blade. A curtain of salt water, thick with silt and surface debris. "It's beautiful," Diaz said. He was smiling. A goofy, slack-jawed smile. "Diaz, snap out of it." I shook him. "That's the narcosis talking. Look, Jack. It's a stairway to heaven." He pointed. The turbine blade had jagged edges where it had shattered the concrete. There were handholds. "We can climb it," Diaz giggled. "We can climb right out to the ocean." "No," I said, grabbing his harness. "We can't. We're 100 feet down. If you go out there, you'll get the bends instantly. Your blood will boil. And if that doesn't kill you, the pressure will crush you. We couldn't go out. We had to go past." The breach was blocking the tunnel. The blade was wedged into the floor, creating a dam. To get to the rest of the eastbound tunnel, the part that might still be horizontal, we had to squeeze through the gap between the turbine blade and the tunnel wall. The gap was a waterfall. "We have to swim it," I yelled over the roar. "Against the current." "I can't swim," Diaz said, staring at the white blade. "I'm made of stone, Jack. Stone doesn't swim." I looked at him. His skin. He was right. The red dust had coated his face, his neck. It was drying in the compressed air. He looked like a statue that was cracking. "You're not stone," I lied. "Come on." I dragged him toward the gap. The water hit us like a fire hose. Cold. Violent. I grabbed a piece of rebar. Wait, no rebar. I grabbed a piece of copper cable hanging from the ceiling. I wrapped it around my waist. I tied the other end to Diaz. "I'm going first," I yelled. "I'll pull you." I dove into the torrent. The water around the blade was chaotic. It pummeled me against the fiberglass. I clawed at the edge of the breach. My hand hit something soft. Not concrete. Not fiberglass. Flesh. I looked up, blinking through the stinging spray. Caught in the jagged concrete of the roof, entangled in the seaweed that had washed in, was a diver. A commercial diver. Heavy canvas suit.
Brass helmet, old school, or maybe modern composite with brass fittings.
He was hanging upside down, his umbilical hose severed. I froze. A survivor? A rescuer? I pulled myself up, fighting the current. I banged on his faceplate with my flashlight. Clink. He didn't move. I shined the light inside the helmet. It wasn't a face. It was red sand. The helmet was full of iron oxide. The man inside had dissolved? No. The man inside had inhaled the dust on the surface. He had suffocated. And then gravity brought him down here. But wait. The eyes. Two perfect, white spheres resting on top of the pile of red dust inside the helmet. They rolled. They looked at me. I screamed. A bubbly, underwater scream. The diver's arm shot out. It wasn't an arm. It was a suit filled with pressurized sludge. It moved with hydraulic stiffness. The glove clamped onto my shoulder. Squeeze. It wasn't attacking. It was anchoring. The current was whipping the body around, and I was just something to hold on to. But the grip was crushing. Let go. I thrashed. I saw Diaz behind me, still on the dry side of the waterfall. He was staring at the diver. "He wants to take you, Jack," Diaz yelled, laughing hysterically. "He wants to show you the deep. Pull me back." I screamed. "Diaz, pull the rope." But Diaz didn't pull. He was staring at the turbine blade. "I want to see too," Diaz whispered. He stepped into the waterfall. The force of the water hit him. He didn't brace. He didn't fight. He just let it take him. He washed past me. "Diaz!" I grabbed the rope connecting us. It went taut. The weight of Diaz, washing down the other side of the breach, jerked me violently. The diver's grip on my shoulder broke. I was pulled through the gap. I went tumbling over the waterfall, past the turbine blade, into the darkness on the other side. We landed in deep water. I came up gasping, flailing. I hauled on the rope. "Diaz!" I pulled him to the surface. He was coughing, spitting water. But he was laughing. "Did you see him, Jack? The pilot?" He waved at me. "Shut up," I snapped. "Check your gear." I shined the light around. We were past the breach. The tunnel here had leveled out. The floor wasn't tilted anymore. But it was different. The walls. In the other sections, the walls were grey concrete, stained with red rust. Here, the walls were white. "Snow?" Diaz asked. I paddled over to the wall. I touched it. It was soft. Mushy. It wasn't snow. It was fungus. "Mold," I said. "White mold. Feeding on the biologicals." The air here was thick. Humid. Hot. It smelled like yeast and rotting meat. The ventilation system had failed here hours ago, and the heat from the oxidation had created a perfect incubator. "We need to get out of the water," I said. "This water is full of spores." We swam toward a maintenance platform. It was a concrete island in the middle of the flooded tunnel. We hauled ourselves up, and then we saw it. The service train. Not the little fiberglass cart. The big one. The Leviathan. It was a massive, multi-car maintenance train used for heavy repairs. It was sitting on the tracks, or where the tracks used to be, about 50 yards ahead. It was tilted to the side, derailed. But the locomotive? It was a diesel-electric hybrid. The generator, I whispered. What? The train has a massive diesel generator to power the welding equipment. It's steel, Jack, Diaz said, wiping mold from his eyes. The engine block is cast iron. It's a pile of dust. The block, yes, I said. But the fuel tank? Plastic. HDPE. And the frame of the generator enclosure? Aluminum. So we have fuel. And we have the ventilation fans. I pointed up. Above the train, in the ceiling, was a massive emergency exhaust vent, a vertical shaft leading straight up to the ventilation island on the surface. The fan motors are gone, Diaz said. They were steel. I know, I said. But the shaft is there. If we can get inside the shaft, we can climb. Climb 100 meters? Vertical. Better than swimming, I said. We started walking along the platform toward the train. The mold was thick here. It carpeted the floor. It crunched under our boots. Crunch. Squelch. And then the mold moved. Not wind. It rippled. From underneath the white carpet, something pushed up. A hump. Then another. Jack. Diaz stopped laughing. The floor is moving. I shined the light. The mold wasn't growing on the concrete. It was growing on them. The tunnel floor was covered in bodies. Hundreds of them. People who had tried to walk out and collapsed from the fumes. The mold had claimed them. And now, disturbed by our footsteps, the gas trapped inside the decomposing bodies was shifting. Hissus. One of the mold mounds deflated with a sigh. "Don't step on them," I gagged. "Oh God, don't step on them." We tried to step between the mounds. It was a minefield of the dead. We reached the train. The Leviathan. It was a wreck. The steel wheels were gone, so the aluminum carriage was sitting flat on the ground. I climbed up onto the rear deck. "The fuel tank," I said. "Check the tank." I found the cap. I unscrewed it. The smell of diesel. Sweet, oily diesel. "It's full," I said. "We have fuel." "For what?" Diaz asked. "The engine is dust." "Fire," I said. "What?" "The shaft." I pointed up. "It's full of mold. It's full of spores. If we climb it, we choke. We need to clear it." "You want to burn the ventilation shaft?" "I want to create an updraft," I said. "A chimney effect. We light a fire at the base. The heat rises. It sucks the fresh air in from the breach behind us and pushes the smoke and the spores out the top. And us. We climb behind the fire," I said. "We ride the thermal." It was a desperate plan, a stupid plan, but the narcosis was making me feel invincible. "Help me find a container," I said. We scavenged the train. We found a plastic bucket. We filled it with diesel. I ripped a piece of fabric from my uniform. I soaked it. "Stand back," I said. I placed the bucket of diesel directly under the gaping hole of the ventilation shaft. I lit the rag with my waterproof lighter, plastic body. I dropped it. Hum. The diesel caught instantly. A column of black smoke shot up the shaft. The sound was incredible, a roar as the fire sucked the air out of the tunnel. The updraft was violent. It ripped the mold off the walls near the vent. "It's working," I yelled. "The smoke is clearing the shaft." I looked at the ladder. The ladder rungs were composite. Fiberglass rungs set into the concrete. Standard for corrosive environments. They were intact. Go! I shoved Diaz toward the ladder. Climb. Don't look down. Diaz grabbed the first rung. He started to pull himself up. And then, the train shifted. The Leviathan groaned. The heat from the fire. It was melting the plastic fuel tank. The main tank. The one holding 500 gallons of diesel. Jack! Diaz screamed. The tank! I looked down. The side of the fuel tank was bulging. Bubblegum soft. Climb faster! I yelled. It's going to burst. I scrambled up the ladder after him. We were 10 feet up. 20 feet. Below us, the plastic tank gave way. 500 gallons of diesel spilled onto the burning bucket. The explosion didn't make a sound. It just made pressure. A massive hand of heat shoved me upward. The fire didn't just burn. It roared like a jet engine. The tunnel below turned into a blast furnace. The updraft became a hurricane. It grabbed us. It wasn't just us climbing anymore. The wind was pushing us up the shaft. Don't let go! I screamed. The fire was chasing us. I could feel the heat singing the soles of my boots. The smoke was thick, oily, black. We climbed. Hand over hand. Lunging. 50 feet. 100 feet. My lungs were burning. Not from exertion, but from the fumes. I was dizzy. I was going to pass out. I can't. Diaz stopped above me. Jack, I can't breathe. Yes, you can. I grabbed his ankle. I pushed. Move. And then, the light changed. Above us. A grate. And through the grate. Grey light. Daylight. Real daylight. We reached the top. The grate was heavy. Cast iron? Please, God, no. I pushed. It moved. It was lightweight. Aluminum. Thank the engineers. I threw the grate open. We rolled out onto the concrete pad of the ventilation island. Fresh air. Salty, cold, clean ocean air. I lay on my back, gasping, coughing up black soot. I looked at the sky. It was overcast. Grey clouds. But it was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. I sat up. I looked around. We were on a concrete platform, about 50 feet wide, in the middle of the ocean. The ventilation tower. We made it, Diaz wheezed. Jack, we're alive. I crawled to the edge of the platform. I looked down at the water. The ocean wasn't blue. It was red. A massive stain of iron oxide was spreading from the tunnel breach below, dyeing the Pacific Ocean the color of dried blood. And floating in the red water were ships. Hundreds of ships. Drifting. Dead. But they weren't empty. I saw a container ship drifting close to us. The containers were gone. Steel. The hull was gone. Steel. But the crew. They were standing on the remaining pieces of non-ferrous debris. And they were looking at us. And behind them, rising out of the water like a guard, the Golden Gate Bridge, or what was left of it. The cables were gone. The deck was gone. Only the two massive towers remained. But they weren't orange anymore. They were stripping. The paint was flaking off. And underneath the paint, they weren't steel. Jack, Diaz whispered, standing beside me. Why are the towers still standing? I stared at the bridge. The impossible bridge. Because, I said, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. They aren't just steel. The core. The core of the towers.
I grabbed my binoculars. Plastic.
I focused. The towers were pulsing. Blue. It's not just the tunnel, I said. The anomaly. It's changing the geology. It's not just destroying iron. I watched as a bolt of blue lightning shot from the top of the bridge tower into the red clouds. It's harvesting it, I said. We are stranded on a concrete tombstone in the middle of a red ocean. The ventilation island, Vent Structure 3, is a fortress. It stands 50 feet above the waterline. It has no steel railings left. They dissolved hours ago, leaving rust stains running down the white concrete like weeping sores. But the structure itself holds. Diaz is fading. We found shelter in the intake housing, a small, aluminum-lined room at the base of the tower. It's dry, but it's cold.
I am looking out the blast-proof window, thick polycarbonate.
The sun has set, but it is not dark. The ocean is glowing. The red plague, the iron oxide dust suspended in the water. It is reacting with the bioluminescence of the dying marine life. The entire sea is a churning, phosphorescent red soup. It looks like lava. And the sky is a web of purple lightning. The anomaly is intensifying. The friction of the dust particles in the upper atmosphere is creating a planetary-scale static charge. But the focal point is the bridge. I have my binoculars trained on the Golden Gate. It is 5 miles to the south. It is impossible. The steel cables, the main suspension lines, are gone. The road deck, the steel trusses, are gone. Only the 2 towers remain. Massive, Art Deco pylons of concrete. But they are not empty. Between the 2 towers, suspended in the air where the cables used to be, is a shape. It looks like a swarm of bees. A massive, swirling cloud of black specks. Diaz, I whisper. Look. Diaz crawls to the window. He is shivering. His skin is grey. Birds, he asks. I adjust the focus. No, I say. Cars. It is a magnetic accretion disk. The anomaly has turned the towers into massive electromagnets. The iron dust from millions of dissolved cars, trucks, and building frames is being pulled toward the bridge. It is swirling around the towers, held in place by invisible lines of force, and mixed in with the dust are the things that didn't dissolve. The plastic bumpers, the glass windshields, the bodies. It is a floating graveyard, orbiting the pylons in a slow, silent hurricane. It's building something, Diaz says. His voice is flat. The storm. It's building a new bridge. I turned away from the window. We needed help. We needed a signal. We explored the interior of the island. We found the control room on the 2nd level. The door was jammed, oxidized hinges, but I kicked the frame until the concrete crumbled. Inside, it was a time capsule. This room was shielded. A Faraday cage built into the walls to protect the sensitive fan controls from lightning strikes. The shielding had protected the electronics from the initial EMP burst of the event. The consoles were plastic. The screens were dark. But in the corner, a red light. Blinking. Blip. 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 A backup radio. Marine band. Powered by a sealed lead-acid battery system. I rushed to it. The microphone was plastic. I pressed the button. Mayday! Mayday! This is Vanguard Operations Chief Jackson Cole. I am at Vent Structure 3. Is anyone receiving? Static. The sound of cosmic shredding. Then, a voice. It wasn't human. It was synthesized. A computer voice. Looping. Sector 7 compromised. Evacuation protocols active. The Ark is launching from Alameda. Repeat. The Ark is launching. The Ark. Diaz slumped into a chair. What is the Ark? Alameda Naval Base, I said. The Navy. They must have ships. Aluminum hulls. Littoral combat ships. Or fiberglass minesweepers. I grabbed the mic again. This is Cole. We are survivors. We have fuel. We have a safe zone. Requesting extraction. The loop continued. The Ark is launching. T-2 hours. Coordinates 37.7 degrees north. 2 hours. They're leaving, I said. They're taking whatever ships survived, and they're getting out into the deep Pacific, away from the dust cloud. We can't swim to Alameda, Diaz said. It's 10 miles. No, I said. But we can make them see us. I looked at the control panel. There was a switch marked aviation beacon. The tower has a massive strobe light on the roof. To warn aircraft. I flipped the switch. Nothing. The bulb is blown? Diaz asked. No. I pointed to the voltmeter. No power. The backup battery is just for the radio. The main generator, the steel crankshaft, is dust. We had a lighthouse, but we had no light, and the Ark was leaving in 2 hours. I paced the small room. My boots squeaked on the vinyl floor. Think, Jackson. Think. We need light. Bright light. Visible for 10 miles through a red fog. I looked at the window again. The lightning. The purple arcs striking the water. The storm, I said. What? The bridge towers, I pointed. They are drawing the charge. They are acting as lightning rods. But we are here. A 50-foot tower in the middle of the water. If we can attract the lightning. You want to get struck by lightning? Not us, I said. The tower. We need to ground the tower. If we create a path of least resistance, the static charge will discharge through us. And that helps us how? It creates a plasma arc, I said. A flash. Brighter than any beacon. If we can time it. Make it rhythmic. SOS. Jack, you're talking about catching lightning with your bare hands. Not bare hands, I said. Copper. I remembered the cables we used on the crabs. We still had lengths of heavy-gauge copper wire coiled in our tool belts. We climb to the roof, I said. We rig a lightning rod. We run the cable down to the water. We create a switch. A switch. A break in the cable, I explained. We hold the ends apart. When we want a flash, we push them together. Close the circuit. The lightning strikes the rod, travels down the wire, jumps the gap, and hits the water. It will kill us. We are insulated. I touched my rubber suit. And we use fiberglass poles to hold the wire. It's physics, Diaz. It's just plumbing with electrons. It was suicide. But it was the only way. We climbed the external ladder to the roof of the tower. The wind up here was ferocious. It was carrying the red dust like a sandblaster. I had to shield my eyes. We were 50 feet up. The view was apocalyptic. To the south, the swirling vortex of the bridge. To the east, the burning ruins of the city. Fires were raging on the hills, wood frame houses burning unchecked. And to the west, darkness, the open ocean, and somewhere out there, the Ark. Rig the cable. I shouted over the wind. We wrapped the thick copper wire around the aluminum railing of the catwalk. Aluminum is conductive. We stripped the insulation off the end to make a contact point. We threw the rest of the coil over the side, down to the water. "Is it touching the water?" I yelled. Diaz peered over the edge. "Yes. It's submerged." "Okay."
I grabbed a fiberglass maintenance pole, a handle for a window washer squeegee.
I taped the other end of the copper wire to it. Now I had a wand, a lightning wand. If I touched the wand to the railing, I completed the circuit between the sky, via the tower, and the ground, the ocean. "Get back!" I yelled to Diaz. "Get inside the stairwell." "Jack, look!" Diaz pointed to the water below. I looked down. The water around our island was foaming. Something was coming up. The ascension. At first, I thought it was the bubbles from the tunnel breach. But then, a hand gripped the bottom rung of the service ladder at the waterline. A grey hand. Then another. They were climbing out of the sea. The Iron Men. The magnetized dead. They weren't swimming. They were walking on the seabed, drawn by the metal in the tower structure. No, aluminum isn't magnetic. Then I realized. The copper. The live copper wire we just dropped into the water. It was carrying a small induced current from the storm. It was a beacon for them. "They're coming up!" Diaz screamed. He grabbed a heavy plastic toolbox and threw it. It hit the lead climber. The grey figure didn't flinch. It just kept climbing, mechanical and relentless. "Ignore them!" I yelled. "We have to signal the ark." I looked at the horizon. I saw lights. Tiny, moving lights on the water, 10 miles out. The flotilla. They were moving. "They're leaving." I raised the wand. The air buzzed. My hair stood up inside my hood. I could feel the static charge building on the railing. The sky was ready to give. I slammed the copper wand against the aluminum rail. Crack boom! A bolt of purple lightning, thick as a tree trunk, slammed into the tower. It travelled through the rail, through the wand, through the cable, and exploded into the water. The flash was blinding. The heat was instant. "One!" I yelled. I pulled the wand back. "Wait." I slammed it again. Crack boom. 2. I slammed it again. Crack boom. 3. S. I did the long dashes. I held the contact. The lightning didn't stop. It flowed like a river of fire. The copper wire glowed cherry red. The insulation started to smoke. "Jack! Watch out!" A grey hand grabbed my ankle. I looked down. A crawler had made it to the roof. It was a woman in a business suit, or a statue of one. Her face was eroded by the salt water, featureless and smooth. She gripped my leg. Her touch burned. She was conducting the charge from the wet floor. "Get off!" I kicked her. My boot hit her stone chest. Thud. She didn't let go. She pulled. I slipped. The wand flew out of my hand. The circuit broke. The lightning stopped. Darkness returned. "Diaz! Help me!" Diaz charged out of the stairwell. He was holding a fire extinguisher, aluminum cylinder. He swung it like a club. Clang. He hit the crawler in the arm. The grey arm snapped. It didn't break like bone. It shattered like pottery. The hand fell off my ankle, still gripping my boot. The rest of the statue tumbled backward, falling off the roof, smashing into the water 50 feet below. But there were more. I saw them cresting the railing. 10 of them. 20. They were swarming the tower. The wire! I yelled. Grab the wire! I lunged for the copper wand. It was hot, melting the plastic tape. I grabbed it. Diaz, get back inside. What are you going to do? I'm not signaling anymore, I yelled, looking at the army of statues surrounding us. I'm clearing the deck. I didn't touch the wand to the rail. I swung the wand at them. The tip of the copper wire hit the nearest statue. I touched the rail with my other hand, grounding myself through the insulated suit. No, that wouldn't work. I had to ground them. I touched the wand to the statue, and then I kicked the railing. The lightning struck. It hit the tower, traveled through the railing, through my boot, rubber sole, insulator, wait, no, the water, through the water on the floor, into the statue. Boom! The statue exploded. The lightning didn't just flow through it. The moisture inside the stone flash-boiled. The crawler disintegrated into a cloud of steam and gravel. The shock wave knocked the others back. I scrambled up. It works. We can use the lightning as a weapon. I looked out at the horizon. The lights of the ark were gone. They had rounded the point. They didn't see us, Diaz whispered. He dropped the extinguisher. They're gone. We stood on the roof, surrounded by the shattered remains of the crawlers, the storm raging above us. We were alone. And then, a sound. From above. Thwop, 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 thwop. Not a boat. I looked up. Breaking through the low, red clouds. A drone. A massive, quadrotor cargo drone. Carbon fiber black. No metal. It hovered over us. A spotlight beamed down, blinding me. A speaker on the drone crackled. Target acquired. Biological signatures confirmed. Prepare for extraction. Extraction? A drone can't carry us. Then, the drone dropped something. A line. A synthetic cable. And at the end of the line, a harness. Just one harness. I looked at the drone. It was struggling in the wind. It was small. A scout. It couldn't lift 2 men. The speaker crackled again. Capacity critical. 1 passenger only. Priority. Operational personnel. I looked at Diaz. He was sitting against the railing. He was coughing red foam. The exposure, the bends, the water. He was dying. He looked at me. His eyes were clear for the first time in hours. Operational personnel, Diaz smiled. Blood stained his teeth. That's you, Chief. You know the codes. You know the tunnels. No, I said. We both go. Or neither. Jack, Diaz wheezed. Look at me. I'm already stone. He pulled up his sleeve. His arm wasn't just grey. It was cracking. The infection. The inhalation. It was calcifying him from the inside out. He couldn't bend his elbow. Go, he whispered. The harness swung in front of me. The drone engines whined, fighting the storm. T-10 seconds to abort. I looked at the arc lights fading in the distance. I looked at the swarm of crawlers climbing the ladder again. I looked at Diaz. I'll come back, I said. I swear to God, Diaz, I'll come back with a fleet. Diaz nodded. He picked up the fire extinguisher. He stood up, painfully. He faced the ladder where the monsters were appearing. Give 'em hell, Jack, he said. I stepped into the harness. I clipped the buckle. Lift. I screamed at the drone. The cable went taut. I was yanked off the roof. As I rose into the air, I watched the roof of the tower. I saw Diaz charge the wave of grey monsters. I saw him swing the silver cylinder. I saw them swarm over him. And then, I saw him grab the copper wand. He raised it to the sky. Crack boom! A final bolt of purple lightning swallowed the tower. The roof vanished in a ball of white fire. When the spot cleared, the roof was empty, scorched black. I spun in the wind, rising higher and higher into the red sky, leaving the iron tomb behind. I am looking at the world from 10,000 feet, and it is burning. The drone carried me south, away from the vent tower, away from the explosion that claimed Diaz. I swung in the harness like a pendulum, numb, cold, and watching the end of civilization pass beneath my boots. From up here, you can see the truth. The city of San Francisco isn't a city anymore. It's a skeleton. The skyscrapers that define the skyline, the Transamerica Pyramid, the Salesforce Tower, they haven't toppled. But they have been skinned. Their steel frames, the rebar in their cores, have dissolved. The concrete and glass, unsupported, have sloughed off like dead skin, leaving piles of rubble at their bases. But the fires! Without water pressure, steel pumps, iron pipes, the fires are consuming everything combustible. The hills are lines of orange flame. The smoke mixes with the red iron fog to create a sky that looks like a bruise. Purple, black, and red. And the bridge. We flew past the Golden Gate. I saw the swarm, close up. It's not just cars. It's shipping containers. It's pieces of buildings. A ring of debris orbiting the magnetic towers. And arcing between the two pylons is a constant, blinding sheet of blue plasma. It's a gate, all right. A gate to hell. The aluminum arc. The drone began to descend. We weren't heading for the open ocean. We were heading for the Alameda Naval Air Station, or what was left of it. The runways were flooded. The liquefaction of the bay mud had sunk the entire island by 10 feet. But floating above the runway was the fleet. It wasn't the powerful grey warships of the movies. Those ships, the destroyers, the carriers, they are steel. They are at the bottom of the harbour now, tombs for thousands of sailors. The fleet was a ragtag collection of the non-ferrous. I saw literal combat ships, the Independence class. They look like trimarans, spaceships on water. They are built of aluminum. They survived. I saw mine countermeasure ships, wooden hulls coated in fiberglass. I saw racing yachts, carbon fiber masts sticking up like needles, and lashed between them all, creating a floating city, were barges of plastic pontoons. The drone lowered me onto the flight deck of the USS Coronado. The aluminum deck rang under my boots, not the heavy clang of steel, but the dull thud of the lighter metal. Men in white Tyvek suits, plastic, rushed me. They hosed me down with foam. "Decontamination," one shouted through a mask. "Scrub the ferrous particulate. Get the dust off him." They scrubbed me raw. They stripped off my suit. They checked me with a wand, a magnetometer. "Clean," the technician said. "He's not magnetized. Get him to the wardroom." I was taken inside. The ship felt wrong. Too light. It bobbed violently in the chop. The wardroom was crowded. Officers in uniforms that looked ill-fitting. Civilians in suits. Engineers. A woman stood at the head of the table. She wore an admiral's rank, but her uniform was stained with soot. "Admiral Vance." "Report," she said, looking at me. "Operations Chief Jackson Cole," I croaked. My throat was raw from the smoke. Vanguard Tunnel Authority. Sector 4. Status of the tunnel? Gone, I said. Breached. Flooded. Liquefied. And the anomaly? It's generating power, I said. The bridge. It's a solenoid. It's harvesting the static. The Admiral nodded. She didn't look surprised. We know, she said. She pressed a button on a plastic remote. A screen on the wall flickered to life. It was a map of the world. Red dots. Everywhere. New York. London. Tokyo. Shanghai. It wasn't localized, the Admiral said softly. It was simultaneous. 10:02 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Global saturation. I stared at the map. The realization hit me harder than the water had. Everyone, I whispered. Everything. The Iron Age is over, Mr. Cole, she said. Physics has rewritten the periodic table. Ferrous metals are no longer stable in solid form. Entropy has accelerated for isotope Fe 56. It wants to be dust. And it wants to be dust now. She pointed to the window, to the burning horizon. We are entering the silica age. The plastic age. The age of glass. If it conducts magnetism, it kills us. If it contains iron, it crumbles. We are rewriting 5,000 years of human history in 5 days. Why am I here? I asked. I'm a tunnel rat. I'm nobody. The Admiral looked at me. Her eyes were hard, but tired. Because you survived the underground, she said. We have millions of people trapped in subways, bunkers, and basements. Most are dead. But the infrastructure, the concrete shells, they are the only shelter we have left against the storms. She tapped the table. The surface is uninhabitable. Coal. The storms are getting worse. The static discharge will fry anything on the surface within a week. We have to go down. We have to reclaim the concrete. We need to seal the tunnels. Drain them. Reinforce them with composite materials. We need to build a subterranean civilization. She slid a tablet, glass and plastic, toward me. You know the Vanguard. You know how the water moves. You know how the air moves. We need you to lead the reclamation teams. Reclamation. I laughed bitterly. It's a tomb, Admiral. It's full of water and ghosts. It's a habitat, she corrected. And it's the only one we have. My name is Jackson Cole. I am the chief engineer of the new Vanguard. We didn't drain the tunnel. We couldn't. The breach was too big. Instead, we adapted. We used the literal ships to tow massive polymer bladders into the tunnel entrance. We inflated them, creating airlocks. We sealed the dry sections. We live in the concrete tubes now. The eastbound settlement. It's a strange life. We wear ceramic armor to protect against the crabs. We use tools made of bronze and titanium. We drink water filtered through reverse osmosis units scavenged from the yachts. The Red Plague is still out there. The ocean is still blood. The storms above still rage, turning the sky into a disco of death. But down here, under the crushing weight of the sea, we are safe. I went back to Sector 9 yesterday. To the breach. The wind turbine blade, the white obelisk, is still there, wedged in the roof. It's our skylight. A faint, grey glow filters down through the water and the fiberglass, illuminating the cavern. I stood on the edge of the water. "Diaz," I whispered. There was no answer, just the drip, drip, drip of the condensation. But I saw something. On the maintenance walkway, where we had piled the debris. A statue. It was a rough, human shape, made of hardened red mud. It was kneeling, one arm raised toward the hole in the roof, as if holding a torch. It wasn't Diaz. Diaz was gone. But someone had built it. One of the refugees. An effigy. I walked over to it. I placed my hand on the statue's shoulder. It was cold. Rough. I left something there. My watch. Titanium case. Rubber strap. I strapped it to the statue's wrist. "Keep time for me," I said. "Count the seconds until we come back to the surface."